I definitely ruin a lot of people's mornings by telling them in the coffee line, yeah, affair and bomb. I was blown 40 feet away from the blast, and then they don't take it well. They don't take it well in the Starbucks line. And then I'm standing there like, yeah. And they're like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah, they weren't really licked off by puppies, if that's what you really wanted to hear. And then I shat rainbows across the universe, and boom, I have prosthetic legs.
Stop it. Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Life Uncut. I'm Brittany.
And I'm Laura.
And today's episode is one I'm so excited about. So today we're speaking to Haven Shepherd, and her story is quite remarkable. The self-determination and the hard work, the inspiration, it's truly incredible. When Haven was only 16 months old, she was living in Vietnam with her family, and her parents decided that they would strap a suicide bomb to them and do what was hoped to be a family suicide. Haven survived and her parents did not. And the story that follows Haven's life is one that I can't even think about in a way without smiling, because seeing you absolutely thrive now at this point in your life, Haven, is remarkable. So I'm so excited to give you the space to tell your story here today. Welcome to Life Uncut.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
Haven, I know that we're going to be covering so much on today's podcast episode, but something that we do with every guest is our Accidentally Unfiltered. It's our embarrassing story. And you said that you have an embarrassing story. We would love to hear it.
Yes, I have. For Australia, I will tell this very embarrassing story that happened last February. I was actually in Melbourne for a swim meet, and I kept telling everybody, like, my biggest fear is to, like, say an Australian accent to an Australian-speaking person. Like, if I'm in a conversation, and I'd be like, oh, no, like, oh, like that was my biggest fear. That was my biggest fear. If I was talking to an Australian-speaking person and I start doing the accent to them. That actually happened to me at the swim meet where they were handing me my towel and I said, oh, thank you. And I was like,
can you, do your best Australian accent. I mean, no one ever says throw another shrimp on the barbie.
No,
but
don't be that person,
I
Laura.
want to hear it. Say throw another shrimp on the barbie.
How about I say a Bluey line? I can say, I watch that all the time with my nieces. What does she say? She says, Mom, Dad, can you do a smoochy kiss? And he's like, they always say that in the episode. Can you do a smoochy kiss? And
that's not bad.
What else do they?
It's not bad. It goes a bit New Zealand, bit Kiwi, and then a bit UK there.
Yeah, whenever Americans do an Australian accent, it has a little bit of like it sounds British.
It's so funny, Haven, that
Yes.
you say the word, like the first word that came to your head for the Aussies was no. My partner's Swiss, and he says it all the time. He's like, Australians, he's like, you don't understand how you say no. And I'm like, what? It's apparently the word no is like a huge thing here.
Yeah, I think you guys are really not represented well on the American TV show H2O. Have you ever seen H2O?
Yes. But it was like 50 years ago.
That is so great. Oh, Haven, you're only 21 years old. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I mean, even just from the short time that we've been speaking to you, your positivity and your absolute just like smiley nature comes through the screen. And I know that you yourself have been through so much hardship in your life to be able to get to the place that you are at now. I would love for you to be able to explain more about your story from what you have been told and from what you know of it, because you were so young when this happened to you. So I can't imagine that you have any memories at all of it, but would have to have learnt that story from other people telling it to you. Can you take us back to what happened when you were 16 months old?
Yeah, so I, like you guys were saying, I was born in Vietnam to two people that had an affair and had me. And the law back then in Vietnam was women couldn't divorce husbands. So my biological mother was still married to her husband, but she had an affair with my biological father. Mm-hmm. So it was just this very complicated relationship, and only that happened. We don't know anything else besides that I was a part of that affair. The story was that he came home one night and he decided to commit a family suicide with them, and I was blown 40 feet away from the blast, and the hospital ride was 2 hours. So they found me 40 feet away. I was on back on my motorcycle, probably on the way to the hospital that was 2 hours away. And I didn't go in shock. I didn't lose blood, all that stuff. Like, we have pictures of me in the hospital. Like, I was fine. Like, it was just like a little baby with her little legs amputated. But yeah, that happened when I was 16 months old. So that's a little over a 1 year old. And then I was adopted when I was 20 months old. So I only was in Vietnam and with my biological grandparents for 4 months until I was adopted to the United States.
Did your, like, going back to the story about your parents, I didn't actually know it was illegal that you couldn't divorce back then. I don't know if it even is now, but did the rest of your family and the extended family know what was happening? Like, did your grandparents know that there was this affair happening, that there was this unrest to the point of that something like this could happen?
I would say in their culture, it was very shameful to get a divorce and then even worse, get pregnant by somebody that isn't your husband. Because even on my Vietnamese birth certificate, I don't even have a father on that birth certificate. Like, we don't even know who this other person was. But it was very obvious that I was a part of an affair because I have a half sister in Vietnam and my biological mom had her with her husband. But in the newspaper, they said they were married. But I think it's a lot of shame in that culture where, like, oh, you don't want to have a baby, especially out of wedlock and especially not with your husband that you're married to. I can understand that's like a huge no-no. And that's even a big no-no now in this reality right now. So I can just only imagine being in her position. But I mean, I'm so thankful that she decided to have me. Like, she could have had any opportunity to just, leave me somewhere, get rid of me, but she kept me. And that's really special to me to think that, I knew I was nursed by her. I knew I was with her all the time because I really loved folding laundry. When I was adopted, I can say this because it's out there now. I was really obsessed with my mom's chest when I was first adopted. So what's made my mom think, you were probably breastfed for like a really long time because, very, very, very poor country. So I knew she really loved me. And I'm very thankful that she decided to keep me and have me and to take care of me because, that was, like I say, it was such a no-no to have an affair and to have the baby.
Haven, you said your grandmother, you were with her for 4 months. Was it your grandmother who found you or were you taken to her? How did you get discovered? And I know you got to the hospital on the back of a motorbike, but who was it that got you there?
I'm assuming it's my grandmother because in my hospital pictures, she was the only one that was there. And we were there it said in the newspaper, I was there for 46 days. And the only reason I got to stay was because other people in the hospital donated money so I could stay in the hospital for longer for my treatment. And I've never had another surgery ever since then.
That's incredible. Yeah. Because you hear that places like Vietnam, especially like rural where you were located, that, that you imagine the healthcare system and the surgeons and the doctors are not as great as they would be here in Australia or a first world country. When you just said you're really grateful to your mum for keeping you and breastfeeding you and keeping you for that first year, not giving you up. How do you look at that now? Because I see that you're really positive about it. When you know that at the end of the day, they wanted all of you as a family to leave this earth, do you have a sort of like an understanding with that? How do you reckon with that? Do you feel like, it was because of love that she did it, so you understand? Do you hold any resentment to what they tried to do at that point because it sort of led you in this different direction? How do you feel about that?
Perspective is a big thing for me. My mom is a life coach, and if she didn't want to raise 7 children, she would not have had 7 children. But she made an emphasis that if I was going to have these many kids, I was going to raise 7 children. So she took time to raise each and every one of us very individually. And for me, it was a big perspective thing. Like, she always talked to me about, you don't know what it's like to be hungry for a really long time. You don't know what it's like to not have a shower and a bed and a family and, Christmas and Easter and all these like really exciting stuff in your life. You don't know what that's like. And so that was a big perspective show. She was telling me growing up, like, she didn't have anything. She had you. and she had, what she could give you. And I don't hold any resentment to them because I don't know what it's like to be hungry and not to have utilities and, a nice home and activities. And, we have a very beautiful life. Life is very blessed. So I just think that they were also, again, in a very hopeless situation where they don't have food, money to buy land or anything, property. They're just very poor in the mountains, living off what they got. So the whole situation was just simply hopeless, and this was the only way out. How many people think how we have anxiety nowadays, the only thing we think that can help us is a glass of wine at the end of the day, doom scrolling on your phone. Like, we have a different type of hopeless, of feeling lonely and no way out. Like, but we don't know how it's an experience where you're in a third world country and there's no opportunities.
You also said we a couple of times in there, and I realized it wasn't just you who was in that explosion. It was also your sister who was there as well. How was she affected? And do you still have any relationship with her?
She was okay. So I have biological grandparents on my mom's side. They took care of us for the amount of time till I was adopted. But my half-sister was not in the explosion at all. But I don't have any contact with her. I have pictures of them and her, but it's almost like a past life thing. Like, they know me, but I have no memory of them. Like, my first memory is my first Easter, running down, like, having candy everywhere. Like, that's like literally my first memory. I don't have any memory at all. So when I look back at pictures of myself, like from a baby, like in the hospital in Vietnam, like that, I don't even recognize that that's me. So when I look at, what my life could have been, that's like almost a past life thing. Like, I was born new when I came over here.
And where, just so for everyone listening, talk us through your amputation. So where it was, did they try and save your legs? How long until they decided to amputate? And then what it looks like for you now, like your prosthesis now?
After the explosion, they decided to amputate my legs below the knee. It's not a clear cut across. They're both two different lengths, but I both have my knees. And I've never had another surgery since. There's a really big hospital around this area. It's in Kansas City. And I went there when I first got home. I got all my vaccinations, everything. And they said, she is a completely healthy baby. She doesn't need any new surgery. She's completely fine. And isn't that crazy, coming from a hospital that has probably very little resources, to have a major surgery on a baby, to have none. I'm 21 years old today. The surgery was 20 years ago, and I've never had another revision. It's just crazy. So yeah, and I have no scarring anywhere. Like, I just have my amputations. Nothing else is on my body. It's just the amputations.
It also shows the incredible resilience of children as well. I mean, I know that that there's often been documentations of like people are so worried about how precious and delicate babies are, but often babies are so incredibly robust because they're built, not that I'm not saying that they're built to withstand any sort of immense amount of trauma that you've been through, but I think that sometimes it is absolutely shocking the things that a child can withstand and then still grow into being this incredible adult human who hasn't had long-term stemming effects from it. So I think my initial thoughts would be, what do you live with daily now? As a byproduct and a result, I would never have thought that that was something that happened, that you could then just move through life and be so unaffected by it in so many ways. What was it like for your mum? How did she come across you to be able to adopt you? What was that process like for her to be able to find you?
Well, so my accident happened when I was 16 months old. But 2 years prior to that, my mom had an epiphany. She was in church one day and somebody was talking about adoption. And she was like, oh, I would like to have that. I'm telling you, like, just like simple epiphany. Like, it never crossed her mind to adopt. She has 6 children of her own. And she always tells the story. It's a really hard buy for your husband to tell him, hey, I think we should adopt after you having 6 children and a house full of 8 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms and
it's not one kid
pool that you just renovated. Yeah, it's a really hard ask for a husband. So they went on a really intense journey on trying to, my mom convincing my dad to adopt, because he was like, babe, we have 14 sports schedules. We have Zach in college playing basketball. We have Sawyer playing middle school baseball. Like, how are we going to adopt? And so they actually went through marriage counseling. My mom says it was basically me telling and the therapist, I think he's wrong, and I think you should change his mind. And obviously in therapy, you can't just be like, yes, you should listen to your wife. But they went through intense couples therapy to basically tell my dad, hey, your wife really wants this, so you better just agree. So after 2 years, my dad went on a men's retreat, and he came back and finally told her, yes, I think we can adopt. And then serendipitous, her college best friend, her high school best friend, reached out to her and said, hey, I found this little girl in the newspaper in Vietnam. Do you want to go get her? And mom was like, yeah, I would love to go get her, just for the adventure. I was not their baby. So they just went on the adventure, and they were gone for 2 weeks in Vietnam. And obviously they fell in love with me. I was just so cute.
Duh.
I was such this precious baby.
Because I listened to some interviews with your mom, and like, bless her soul, she's incredible. But I heard her saying she tried really hard when your dad was like, I don't want to adopt. She tried really hard to let that go and be like, oh, okay, it's not for us. He doesn't want it. And for whatever reason, she's like, I woke up every day and could not stop thinking about that. Like, I was destined to have this child. And then when they went to pick you up to take you back to another family, she talks about how the fact that you were just obsessed with them and your dad from the day that they picked you up, like, just didn't want anyone else, just wanted to be with him, and you fell in love immediately. It's like you chose them.
Yes. My mom called it when I was little. I had like a little sixth sense. Like, I could always pick up on, certain situations, certain things to, I was very much an old soul. Like, I could speak through my eyes, basically. So when they came and got me for this adventure, that I was not their baby. I was just this, it's just going to be an adventure. I fell in love with my dad. I don't think I've ever, because you got to think, like, a baby that has never seen a very tall, bearded, white, dark-haired man, like, wow, that's so intriguing. But I fell in love with my dad on the beach, and then he had to go home for work after a week. And I'm still quite in love with my parents. I was telling them the other day on the couch. I was laying on the couch.
I'm gonna cry.
I was laying on the couch, and I was like, we were watching a movie, and I was like, guys, this is just great. Just the three of us.
Everyone else has got lost.
So going back, he had to leave for work after a week to go back home. And my mom spent 2 weeks with me. And again, I wasn't their baby. They were bringing me to this other family that homeschooled and wore glasses and knitted their own sweaters and lived on a farm and did not have health insurance. It was really a great situation.
I love that you said they knitted, just to set the scene. They knit on a farm.
Yes, they lived on a farm and they did not have health insurance, and they were bringing me home to them. And after 2 weeks, they dropped me off. I was not having a good time, because I just want to, like, paint a picture for you what I was like in Vietnam with my mom. I needed to wear all her jewelry, and I was really into, like, they bought me new baby clothes on the street. I was really into wearing my new baby clothes, and I had a purse, and I had hair clips, and I was not supposed to go to this knitting sweater family that lived on a farm. She said I was a shepherd girl from the very beginning. Like, I needed my nails painted. I needed, like, this is a 20-month-old baby, by the way. Like, there are pictures of me with just tons of all her stuff on. And so she just knew that, I was just a shepherd. So giving me up to them for 6 days was just so hard for her. And then Pam called her one day after the 6 days and said, hey, I don't think it's working out with the Proctors. Haven isn't very happy. Do you and Rob still want her? And my mom got off the phone after she said yes. She got off the phone with them, and she said she spent $2,000 at the mall that day because she knew I was coming home that night. She's like, she needs a new crib. She needs a new stroller. She needs a car seat. Oh, a whole new wardrobe. She said she spent probably over $2,000 just going crazy at the baby stores. And so she was ready for me to come home.
Haven, it's such a remarkable story for so many reasons, but I would assume that most adopted families would expect to have a period that is hard with their new baby. So it is absolutely wild to me that this farm knitting family after 6 days was like, oh, this is a bit hard. Like I would genuinely expect it to be that. You know, it's a new child in a new environment with new people. Like, of course they're going to be scared and crying and all the other things. So to think that they got to the end of that 6 days and thought that this isn't the right fit for me, it's almost like there was this divine fate that was at work there, that you are exactly where you're supposed to be.
Well, it sounds more like, I have no doubt if you did live your life on that farm, you would have had a wonderful life. But it sounds more like they were really great people that wanted to do a great thing. And being an amputee, I can imagine your medical expenses were going to be astronomical. And so they've wanted to do a good thing. But at the end of the day, you need health insurance. They didn't have it. So I think they probably bit off more than they could chew, even though they had great intentions.
No, I don't hold anything against them. It just wasn't the right fit. Like, they are, I still know them to this day. Like, they are great people. They were just not for me. They were going to give me a beautiful life regardless, but it just wasn't the right fit. And I was just a shepherd girl. I'm a maximalist at heart, and I was a maximalist back then. And it was just not going to cut it with the one sweater.
I love the ownership too.
Hey, when you got into swimming really young. So, I mean, at 3 years old, you started swimming, and it's obviously taken you across the world. It's become such a massive part of your life. Talk us through, because I can only imagine as a parent who has so many children, it is really, really hard to cater to the intense schedule of all the different sporting requirements of your kids and their schedules and everything else. How, firstly, did your parents allow for you and make time for you to be able to have the schedule of someone who is a Paralympian now?
So yeah, I started swimming at 3 years old. We had a pool in our backyard, and it was very important for my dad for me to learn how to swim, because if I just waltzed outside one day, I needed to know to learn how to just at least paddle to like not drown. So that was really important. So people are always surprised when I say that. Like, yeah, I learned how to swim at 3 years old. You need to put your kids in lessons or something. It's an important life skill to learn how to swim. So I always knew how to swim. It's never like, oh, I didn't know how to swim and then I became this great Paralympian. No, I was in track, and the problem with track is that the stuff would go into my eyes, and I think it was sweat. Sweat would go into my eyes, and my heart would start pumping.
The stuff.
My makeup would just go everywhere. It was just not for me. My parents were like, duh, let's get her in swimming. So I had one swim lesson, and they were like, oh, she needs to go to a different swim club. Like, we can't train her the way, like, she's way too advancing. So we went to an elite club when I was, I would say 13 to about 18. I was there for a long time, and I progressed like very rapidly. I progressed at 13. I made the emerging team, was on Team USA, and then just built on from there. I made lots of international teams. I made standards, all that stuff. So swimming was just a hobby at first, and then I think my parents realized, like, oh, she's pretty good. We should probably invest more time into this. So it was definitely really hard being in a big family and having lots of different sports schedules, but my parents made it work. My grandparents picked me up a lot, but I think my parents did a great job. They came to everything. Even like my brother played baseball at the time. Like, we would be at swim practice and then straight to the ball field. I always tell people I was raised at sporting events. I was raised in the winter at basketball courts, and then in the spring it was volleyball, and then all summer long was at a baseball park. And my 4 main food groups were nacho cheese, Skittles, ice cream, and Gatorade. And it's all the food dyes.
It's actually incredible because you hear so much about, like, when you're training to be an athlete, you have to eat, you've got to eat your macros and your micros and weigh yourself, and you only eat proteins at this time. And you're like, I'm a Paralympian, survived on nachos and hot dogs. Haven, when you get in the pool, do you feel any relief in terms of, are you in any kind of pain, or do you feel a lot of pressure being on your prosthetics all day? Does that provide you with any sort of comfort?
Yes, for till I was about 11 to about now until 21, you have to think, I always describe to people wearing prosthetics all day long. It's not like I think about it all the time. Like when you wake, first thing you wake up in the morning and you put on your glasses to see. First thing I do in the morning is to put my legs on so I can walk. So like it's not like something in the conscious forefront thought all the time that I have prosthetic legs, but going to school for 8 hours and then getting to swim for 3 hours and just take my legs off, like that is just the relief that I needed. Like my arms could handle the weight that my legs have been doing all day, and it was just such a great like relief. And by the end of the night I'm like, oh, you did good today. You did good. You walked all up the stairs at school and you got to swim and just pump your arms, and now you just get to rest and do it all again tomorrow.
Do you think in your lifetime people have ever underestimated your abilities? And I mean this in a way of like judging a book by its cover. People who may not know you or who may see that you're a double amputee. Have you ever felt that people have underestimated you because of having, no legs?
Yeah, especially growing up in my small town, everybody really knew me, but it was never like, oh, she can't do that. It was always like people saw me grow up through my whole life, and then so it was like, oh, Haven can do that. I never had to prove myself in any type of way because parents saw me on the playground playing with their kids, like, oh, like she can keep up. So I grew up with people that already knew me, so I don't think people thought I would make it on the professional level as I did, but I never gave people a reason to doubt me anyway. So I say that's the best way I could describe it, is that I never gave people a reason to doubt that I could be like everybody else because I was already keeping up with everybody else, basically. I was very much a normal child, and I want to say that to any parents that have children with disabilities. Your kid is going to grow up normal if you treat them normal, and there's no reason to put labels on anybody if you don't put any limits on them. As soon as you label your kid as disabled, you're going to put a limit on them.
I think that's something society has taken a long time to learn, though, and that's for reasons like the Paralympics not being as advertised and as visible as it is now. And a really good friend of ours, Ellie Cole, she's a Paralympic swimmer. I recently went into the I'm a Celebrity jungle with her. So she has one leg, she's got one prosthetic, and the number of people that doubted that she could be okay in there, myself included, when I went in, and we've been friends for a long time, but when we went in, I was like, let me know if you need anything, because it's like pretty hardcore living conditions and like a lot of climbing up mountains, like off center kind of stuff, and all
Also,
the challenges.
Her leg literally needed electricity, so they brought in a solar thing to be able to charge it.
Yeah, we had to solar charge her leg, so I'd be like walking around with the solar panels. But I learned very quickly that she's more capable than I am. And I think that is also something just from seeing the Paralympics more on our screens. But people up until probably, I don't know, maybe this is just my ignorance, but people up until probably the last 10 years have assumed that if you are an amputee or if you're in the Paralympics, if you have any kind of disability, that you are not capable to completely immerse yourself into a quote unquote normal society. But it's just so far from the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially living by myself, it kind of hit me when I moved to a new town. I would be out buying groceries and people tell me, "Oh, you're so good that you're getting out there." I'm like,
"You're like, what?
Why?" Like, why? I need groceries. Don't you need groceries? That's why we're at a grocery store, question mark. Like, I also drive a car, and I have a driver's license, and I have health insurance. I have all these normal things. I have paid my taxes. Like, I'm just like anybody else. And it's almost like I describe it as being like an alien out in the world that like lives in your reality as well. Like, I'm just an alien living in other people's reality. But I also describe being an amputee like constantly being in a constant state of pregnancy. When you're pregnant, everybody just goes up to you and says, "Oh, how long has it been? And are you doing okay? And you're doing so well." And it's like, it's just, being an amputee is being in a constant state of pregnancy, of people always needing to say something to you.
How do you deal with that? It's so, well, infantizing. It's so like it's treating a grown adult like they're a child because of the way that they present. How do you deal with that when a complete stranger oversteps the mark or says something that is completely out of line? Do you have the confidence to say, actually, that you're really out of place there? Or do you, like, what do you do?
I think every day that I leave my home, I get asked what happened to my legs and all that stuff. But it's actually funny. I thought of this the other day. You would never go up to a bald person and be like, so when did you start going bald? So when you go up to an amputee, so when did you lose your legs? Because I could say the same thing back to you. So when did you start dressing bad? Like, it's just the same amount of, well, you don't have legs today. Huh? I'm like, yes, I don't have my legs every single day. It hits me different times and other times, but when I was a teenager, it definitely was like, can I just eat out with my friends and not be a museum for you to investigate into?
It's almost as though people who have any sort of like presentable disability, quote unquote, have to carry the explanation as to why they have that. Some people feel as though that it's not rude or it's their prerogative to ask because it's like, well, it's there, so I'm just asking. But you put something up on your socials, which I thought was really interesting because it's one thing to ask the question, but what do you do with that information once you've received it? And you sort of said, if you're going to ask someone about their disability, you better be able to hold space for the reason why they have that or the reason why they've experienced it. What is the reaction that people give you when you tell them why you lost your legs?
Yes, I mean, I definitely ruin a lot of people's mornings by telling them in the coffee line, yeah, a fair and bomb, and then I was exploded, and this was happening to me. And then they don't take it well. They don't take it well in the Starbucks line. And then I'm standing there like, yeah, this didn't happen to me yesterday. I'm just not gonna, yeah. And they're like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah, they weren't really licked off by puppies, if that's what you really wanted to hear. And then I shat rainbows across the universe, and boom, I have prosthetic legs.
Stop it. It's so true though, right? Like, there's not going to be any positive event that I can think of that would leave you with an injury like that. Like, there's just not. And people need to be a bit more self-aware. But we've spoken to Lauren Wasser, the model with the golden legs. Like I mentioned, Ellie Cole. We've spoken to quite a few Paralympians and amputees. And it's sort of in contrast to what you're saying, and I want to know if you agree, but they've sort of said, like, they often will see, very obviously, little kids staring at them and asking their parents, like, they watch it go down. You can see that the little kids pointing, what's that? Why don't they have legs? And they've always said, come over to us and ask us. Like, in that sense, they tell parents, come and speak to me because I would rather educate your child that this is normal and I can do all this stuff and I'm like a superhero. Do you find space for that when it's almost like an education for the younger?
Yes, I see it both ways. So I think when you are a parent, it is a really big responsibility to raise children. It is your responsibility to teach your children how to react and to approach people, because it's not really appropriate to just, because like my niece went for a long time. She'd be out in public. She's 3 years old, and she was like, hey, that man's bald. And like, you just don't say that out loud. So yes, I do love it when parents do come up to me and educate your children, but it's also their responsibility to teach them they're just a person existing. Like, you wouldn't like somebody to come up to you all the time. I feel like it's as a parent, you're responsible for your child, and to pull them aside afterwards and say, so what did you learn from that experience? How are you going to, when you see somebody else like that again, how are you going to acknowledge? And because it's not nice to just, like, kids are also children too. Like, they have a lot of grace where you can say, yes, when kids point at you and like, just like, I had a kid one time, I was with a group of my friends, they're like, ugh, mom, look. Like, that is your responsibility as a parent to be like, hey, that's not kind. That's not kind. But more times out of not, parents do handle those situations a lot better. I think the problem I have is when adults don't handle the situation. situations better.
But I would almost say that a lot of times children who don't handle it well are often a reflection of their parents. Because I would say that there is momentary and times when there's grace for it. For example, I have a 5-year-old daughter. When she was 3, we were in the shops and very loudly she said, "Look, Mummy, look at that woman's big bottom." Which obviously we then stopped down and I had a conversation with her and I was like, "Marley, imagine if someone said to you something that you didn't like look at this." And I can't remember what I used it as an example, but she was hysterical afterwards because she didn't say it with the intention of being mean. She said it as an observation that she thought. But once she realized it was mean, she then felt horrible that she was mean. She was like, because she doesn't want to be a mean kid, I think we're so lucky, especially where we are in Sydney. There is so much diversity in so many different ways. She goes to school with people who have different types of abilities and disabilities. And I think now that she's very much aware of that there are still kids who are not necessarily in her class, but that I know that she has interacted with who don't have those sensitivities, but I do think it comes from the parents as well.
I feel like kids have so much wonder and you can't blame people's curiosity. Like, I know I make people uncomfortable because, like, out in public, you see something, you're looking at it, and then I notice you're looking, and then, oh, you feel awkward, so you need to say something, and it's just an awkward exchange at the bar, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go walk over there now, and goodbye. I think you can't blame curiosity. I mean, all of us are curious and all of us deserve grace, but if you don't handle situations well, that's where I am like, come on.
I mean, obviously we've covered so much about your story as to how you've gotten to where you are, but like the most incredible part of it is the fact that you are a Paralympian. When was the time that you realized that your career in swimming, that it was going to be what it is, that you had the ability, that you were the leader in your sport, that you were actually going to make it to the Paralympics? Like, when was it that you realized that this is something that could be a career for you?
Oh, I think that there's a saying that's like, ignorant is bliss. I feel like my entire teens was just bliss because I was oblivious to everything around me, and I still am not very self-aware, but I think being that young, experiencing that level of intensity and eliteness at a young age, it was just almost like not aware of it, like aware like this is like really serious, like I'm about to swim for my life at this race, and but it's just not, that's just such not my personality. I am going to be so honest with you guys right now. I'm not very a competitive person. It's just not it's just not in my heart. I don't need it. I don't need to win all the time. It just doesn't fuel me like other things do. Like I said, ignorance bliss. Like, so I went to the Paralympics in Tokyo in 2020. That was a great experience. I was 17 years old. Wow. I just graduated high school and I had no friends. And I am on this adventure for 2 months going to the Paralympics for the first time. And it was just great. Obviously, after the fact, I found out about some really awful things after the fact. But overall, my experience was great. And coming home from that high, I just knew that I was needed to be myself from here on out. Like, I think people really struggle with group settings and trying to not be themselves and trying to fit in. But my biggest goal going into Tokyo 2020 and being away for 4 weeks was to just be myself, not change for anybody, not change for my surroundings, not compromise on my values, my morals, just because I feel pressure from people around me. And so that's what I did. Like, I went into every race thinking I need to be myself. Like, I'm not going to be this tight ass person in the call room, going to stare you down and make mean faces at you and tell you that you did a shitty job and you're blah, 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 blah. Like, that's just not my personality. Like, no, I'm going to be nice. I was raised to be kind to people and show people grace. And oh, that was such a good race, and you did such a good job. Like, that's how I was raised. And I also think at that time I was younger, I was representing my parents and my family. So if word got back to them that I was a brat and I was not responsible and I was not respectful to people around me and my authorities, that would get back to my parents, and they would tell me, like, we raised you better than that, and you would show respect to people that are older than you, even though you don't like the rules, blah, 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 blah. So I knew that was my responsibility going into Tokyo. And I feel like I did a good job. I didn't get in trouble once.
I feel like I did a good. You're at the Paralympics. You definitely did a good job.
Well, what fuels you then? You say it's not winning, but I mean, that's such a different perspective than anybody else we've had on, I mean, any other elite athlete has always said, like, winning is kind of the goal. So if it's not that, what makes you keep going when you are a Paralympian?
I think having fun. Like, I just have too much fun. I just, it never gets too serious for me. Like, I just have too much fun. All I was probably thinking about at the Paralympics was, oh, I promised this track girl I was gonna eat ice cream with her that night at the dining hall, so I need to get back, like, right now. Like, I just have too much fun, and I was there with my friends.
I want to adopt you. I want you. Come and live with us.
Life is just too, I don't take life too seriously, but you gotta have, like, again, that perspective thing. You are here, you got a free plane ticket to Tokyo, Japan. Like, have fun with your friends. Get all the Cokes from the soda machine and take them back to your dorm room, and sneak food in from the dining hall, and help your friends sneak out to other boys' apartments. Like, that is what life is about keeping it light and competing very, very hard, but mostly fun.
Talking about ignorance is bliss, just when you were talking about, like, 2020 Olympics was great, Paralympics was so fun, but then you made a comment about, you know, besides those bad moments, but it didn't happen to you. What were you referring to? What was there something that went down with the Paralympic swim team that we're not across, or have I missed something?
No, I just feel like it's more of a little bit more drama happened behind the scenes that I was just not aware of, or I was not invited to know about, which is fine. I'm always out of the loop, so it's fine. But I think it's just a level of, like, drama and I don't like her, and she stole my shirt, and she
oh wow,
and he likes her, and I just stay in my room. I just stay in my room, and I go to lunch when I'm supposed to, and I get on the right bus. I get on the right bus that I'm scheduled for, and I pack everything. I am just an A+ student.
So what is success like for you now? What does it look like outside of the pool? And are we going to see you at the next Paralympics?
Life for me right now is just enjoying my family. I don't think I've ever spent this much time with my family because I'm always on the go. It wasn't just swimming. It was other commitments that I had to be gone. Like, last October, I was probably gone for every single weekend, flying everywhere because I needed to be. And so I actually get to enjoy my family and get to enjoy, you know, getting to see my nieces and nephews grow up, and, you know, actually spending time with the people that I actually care about, because you do this for the people that you love. I do it for me and my family, and to represent ourselves and to get our story out there. But I didn't actually get to enjoy the people that helped me along this journey. Like, I'm not actually spending time with them. Being on home soil for 2028 does sound enticing, but I'm enjoying my little break right now. I get to enjoy being a little sassy little girl back in my hometown. And do you guys ever watch Gilmore Girls?
Yes!
I feel like a little Gilmore Girl.
Grew up with the Gilmore Girls.
That's how I feel. I feel like I'm just in this, like, little bubble that I never got to live in. Everything was just so out there, and I just get to, oh, this is so nice. I get to just be at home and to enjoy my fruits of my labor.
Haven, if you weren't swimming, what would you want to be or do with yourself?
You guys know this. I only because you don't have this sport in Australia. Do you know who Taylor Swift's boyfriend is? Travis
Kelce of course.
Of the Kansas City Chiefs.
I watch so much of that football now because my partner loves it. I know all of it.
Okay, well, the game's going on right now and it's not going well. But I would like to audition to be a lineman for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I already have my audition already laid out. Hi, I'm Haven Shepherd. I am 5'5". I weigh 135 pounds. I've never played a contact sport, but I would love to get out there. And the linemen are the big 300-pound men that shove people.
I don't think you can be a linesman. I don't want to be the person that bursts your bubble.
I disagree. With the attitude that Haven has, I reckon you could do whatever you want, honestly.
They would squish you. If they fell on you, you are dead.
I think a power of positive energy would just push these men over. And I want to be the first woman lineman. And I feel like I meet a lot of requirements. I gave them my height, my weight. I feel like that is enough for them to audition. Not audition, try out. That's not a play. It's not a play.
We'll put the call outs for you. This is definitely like a relationship style podcast. And you mentioned before that you would help like your friends sneak out at the Paralympics to meet boys. Ellie, who we've had here, says that it's just like, it's hot property there. Like it is almost like a dating site.
Look at how uncomfortable she is already.
Well, I guess what's the dating life like for you? Like, are you dating anyone? Have you ever had heartbreak? Like we love this sort of relationship, goss.
Oh, I did have a very serious boyfriend. I think a year ago.
I think it's over.
It was not a good boyfriend. He was not a good boyfriend, but he was 6 foot. He was 6'3", so I will give him that. I can't believe I'm telling you this. He will never see it anyway.
He will not.
I recently had to break off a situationship with he was a New York City detective that I met on a modeling shoot.
Wow.
And he approached me in real life and asked me for my phone number. I was like, yeah, it was crazy. He had a badge and a gun and everything. And I was like, oh, I'm about to get in my Uber. Like, yes, I had to recently break off a situationship, and I didn't even know how to write this text message. So I went into Chat GPT and I typed in long paragraph breaking off message, period.
If there is ever a 21-year-old breakup, that is it. That is brilliant.
So I copied and I pasted and I sent it. I didn't even read it. I was like, good enough.
You didn't even read it?
How do you even know it got the names right?
What if it's written like Shakespeare or something?
I did skim it and I was like, oh, that's too sassy for me. Nice way, long paragraph, nice way to break off with somebody that's not your boyfriend, period. And then it was like this long. It was this long, and I was like, I'm not reading all that. And I actually sent it this morning. So.
Oh my God, Haven.
Has he written back?
I haven't looked. I am not very much a dater, but if I go on a date, I like really go on a date. Like I double stack dates with different people. So I call them my double decker dates. So like one time I had a dinner date at my apartment at 5:00, but he had a meeting at 7:30. So I was like, oh, he's going to be gone. Like way before this other guy's going to pick me up for a movie.
Wow. You
I will
He wasn't though, was he?
Guys, it doesn't end well. Louis overstays his time up at my apartment because he keeps talking. And I'm like, hey, Louis, we need to go. So I walk him down the stairs, and my other date is standing outside his car waiting for me.
Oh my God, you tag teamed date. They high-fived on the way out?
It's not my proudest moment, but the other guy that I got in the car with to the movie date, he just kept saying, so who is that guy? And I was like, oh, it's he just needed my Wi-Fi for homework.
I needed my Wi-Fi.
I am in awe and in shock, and I have all the feelings. Though, if that happens, though, the problem is you've got to walk the other guy to the car, but you can't kiss him goodbye because then that's just too obvious. You just got to like give him a high five and then get him in the guy's car.
Nice hustle, mate. High five.
You did kiss him goodbye.
No, I didn't kiss either of them.
Oh, good. That's fine then.
Oh
That's
my
just a friend date.
Are you too busy to stretch them out? What's this like stacking them all up in one day?
I don't know. That's why I had to break it off with the situationship. Like, I'm not going to do this all day long. It's not for me. But if I go on one date, I'm like just going, like, that is my day to go on a date.
Yeah.
You've got no time. You're a Paralympian. You don't have time for dating. Like, you've got stuff to do, places to be.
It's either a 0 or 100 where I'm like, okay, coffee in the morning with this person and then lunch with this person and then, oh, I like the first guy better. So I'm going to have this other guy drop me off at the first guy's place so we can go get ice cream. I don't recommend double-decker dating.
It's because you put so much effort into, I've done that before. You put so much effort into like the outfit, you got your makeup on, you've done your hair, like you're ready to go. You're like, I don't want to waste this on like an hour date. So like, I understand that. But I tell you what,
yes,
you are a little surprise package. I did not expect that from you right then.
Yeah, I'll surprise you. I have a lot of little trinkets in my sleeve. I'll actually surprise you. I'm not allowed by my family to carry any type of self-defense, like pepper spray or anything like that, because I accused a Chipotle worker one time when I was 16 of giving me his phone number, and I yelled across the Chipotle, I am a minor and you're not supposed to give out phone numbers to minors. Oh, and he lifts up the card and he's like, it's just a rewards card.
Haven, that should have been your accidentally unfiltered. That is so funny. How embarrassing.
There is just so much more to me that people don't realize.
I know you said before that people look at you and that you make them uncomfortable, but can I just say, I don't think we've ever had a guest that has made us feel as comfortable straight out of the bat. You are a wonderful human with an incredible personality, an incredible outlook on life, and I have personally loved speaking to you so much.
Your story is truly remarkable, but I think what is even more exceptional than that is your perspective on life and how you present yourself and how you share your story. Haven, you've been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming and being a part of the pod.
Oh, Phil, thank you guys. Thank you so much.